say now you've got, and you teach some of the best players in the world. And when you got the average guy or junior, it's pretty easy to see what they're doing wrong. How difficult or what are the challenges when you're working with touring pros and seeing just something just minute that might cause them to miss the putt? I mean, how that takes some time and some years of practice of learning and teaching to see those things. That's a gift you have.
Yeah, I've got a few points to this question. I'll try not to be too long-winded.
No, go.
At a tour event, the easiest golf lesson is a putting lesson. It's when somebody comes in and they're struggling with pulls and they have the ball too far forward.
Okay.
Right? So like that, that's easy. You're like, okay, cool. You're hitting pulls, ball too far forward, and you're saying, let's move the ball back. Now the ball's starting on line.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you don't see that very often.
Right.
So the hardest lesson is when a player gets up to it, they look rock solid over the ball, they have a great stroke, and they're just not making anything. Those are tough, right? Because like physically, you're just like there's not much to change. And early, I say early in my career, I'm not that old, and I have, I'm 40. I've been teaching for 13, 14 years. But like, early I would try to find something, like just give them something, and not necessarily make something up, but almost, and just try to change. And now the more I've done this, it takes patience, it takes persistence, and you got to be able to tell that player to keep shooting. Now, sometimes there's a reason why they're not making putts, for sure. And then also a lot of it is just the expectations. Sometimes their expectations get way out of control as far as and way too high as far as what we should be making. But a lot of it is, it is the ability to hit a putt that only goes a foot past the hole rather than 2.5 feet past the hole, or that just finishes even with the front edge. Because I always tell players, I'm like, look, you got 3 physical pieces to being a great putter. We got to be able to control where it starts, how far it goes, and then green reading. And then you have a mental component as well. And so the short putts are obviously very directional. Being able to deliver the face square. But then the long putts, it's all about how your distance control. But then everybody wants to make more 10 or 15 footers.
Right.
That's the thing everybody comes up to, because that's a good iron shot, and they're like, I need to make more of these to make birdies. And that's where you really have to put all 3 up together. You've got to be able to start it pretty well where you're looking with great distance, and then be able to anticipate the putt and read it well. But I see the biggest thing as far as the variance in performance, to where everything goes in on Thursday, but then on Saturday nothing falls, is just that little bit of one day my speed was spot on, and then the other day it was a little softer, a little firm, and I think that's where we see the fluctuation of our performance is much more with touch, distance control than it is something to do with my stroke.
Yeah, and expectations too, pressure, all those things factor in, especially on the PGA Tour and the LPGA, because you've worked with a lot of guys at John Tillery, worked with Kevin Kisner, Scott Brown, Bryce Garnett, and you got Allie McDonald on the LPGA. You've worked with LPGA players, you've worked with PGA Tour players. You've got to learn something every time you go out each week and able to come back and teach your students at Old Waverly. I mean, there's got to be a lot of things you can learn from those guys as well. They learn from you and gals to bring back home. I mean, what are some of the things? I think you've hit most of those by watching them, but that's got to be a great asset for you to come home and teach. Because I've seen these juniors at Old Waverly, what you and BJ have done, and how good Oak Hill Academy is. I mean, that's about as good a high school team, and it's a small school as there is. I put them up against anybody in the Southeast, but
they're great studs. Yeah, I mean, they're good. They are. They're really good players.
And it's amazing to watch how you've transformed that whole junior program, and from the beginning where you would change colors of hats if you got to another level. And I mean, I think what you've learned on the PGA Tour now and LPGA has got to help you when you come home, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, you were great to to sign your name to me being your short game instructor back in 2000. Oh goodness, 2009, 10, something like that, right? I'm pretty sure I was positive. I was learning more than for a lot of people. But when I went out there, and the first few times I would go out to putting and with you, and it was just like I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, but I was expecting to be wowed, kind of. And what I learned, and one thing that's really something the best players that I see putting, and full swing as well, so we'll just stick to short game, it's like, it's not that they do anything that amazing, like during their practice session, but they do the same thing over and over. They're not jumping around trying different things. You know, they have a system, they have a process. They go in, they have their 2 or 3 drills they like to do. They do those same 2 or 3 drills. They do their work, and then they leave. And the more I've been around guys and girls on tour, that's what I've seen from the best. It's like they already know what they're going to do before they get to the golf course. They have their to-do list, if you will. They knock it out, and then they go home. And then they hit repeat, and they're fine with that. They don't want to have it almost feels chaotic to them if they're trying stuff